Hi, and welcome to another episode of Speedtalks, the podcast about everything tech in the financial industry. The topic of today's episode is how much do IT projects cost and how to avoid unnecessary expenses. In this episode, we'll briefly go through on what influences IT project costs and where hidden expenses may be lurking that clients often don't realize. In order to avoid issues with hidden costs, it's good to prepare beforehand, before starting a collaboration with an external partner, before embarking on this journey for the new IT project, and to focus on few key aspects. And this episode is a collection of 4 tips on what to pay particular attention to so you don't end up facing unexpectedly high costs. You'll naturally get the cost overview, and I'll try to answer the key question: how much does it cost in the first place? And then 4 key factors that impact initial project costs, 3 that affect it along the way, plus 6 tips on how to do this well without breaking the bank and stay on top of the situation, what to address. And on top of that, our estimates based on historical data align with the actual production costs at, let's say, 90%, at the level of 90% of most cases. So I guess it's worth listening, and stay tuned. All right, so the first question is, how much can an IT project cost? And my favorite answer is, it depends. I know that was not necessarily what you were expecting, but it really does depend. It could be 5,000, can be 50,000, can be 500,000 or 5 million. Everything really depends on key factors that I'm going to expand on later. But in a nutshell, small IT projects, simple projects that generally don't have much complicated architecture, don't require a lot of functionalities or screens, whatnot, this can cost up to several $1,000s usually. The medium-sized projects, often requiring integrations with other systems, more complex functionalities, possibly both on web and mobile, blah, blah, typically few dozens to few hundreds of thousands, around, maybe 100,000, 200,000, that's basically the starting point here. A large project, a complex multi-layer project with multiple integrations requiring a full proper Scrum team of specialists working for several months. Here, I guess, sky is the limit, but we're talking 500,000 north of that for sure. And I often hear when I explain the costs, the customers say, how much? Like expecting a cost of a few thousand and then being faced with, 100,000. And this gap is often stemming from this lack of understanding of what influences production costs, what they depend on, and how complex the work often is. Okay, let's take a look at some key factors impacting IT project costs. So in the first place, the scope, the scale, and the complexity, the specificity, and the level of customization of requirements. The premise is, the more functionalities, the more expensive the app is at the end of the day. It's as simple as that, plainly. The more specific and customized the requirement is, example, custom interfaces, complex algorithms, advanced analytics, the higher the cost. The more features, the more modules, the more integrations, the more hours required to build, the more resources required and needed, the higher the production costs. And there's, the more items on the list, the longer development, the more costs. That's basically the premise here. The second aspect is technologies and tools. So the choice of platforms, programming languages, project tools can have a significant impact on the cost of the project. No-code, low-code solutions may be faster and cheaper, but they are suitable for only simple case studies and simple projects. So let's say a fully fledged banking app, for example, that requires more robust technology. So choosing the technology, like programming languages, frameworks, tools, and the complexity of it, is it requiring artificial intelligence? Do we have a data warehouse there? Is smart contracting on blockchain here? Blah, blah, blah. It all impacts the required team skills and the team composition, which can, at the end of the day, translate into the increased costs. And that's the, let's say, point number 3 here, the team. Who and where they are. Because most projects are still built based on the hours spent by specialists. either per month or per milestone or per entire project. And therefore, those costs depend heavily on who you work with and where they are located, like geographically. Local teams, Western Europe, the US, the UK, the Nordics, they will always be more expensive than nearshore options in CEE, and these in turn will be more costly than offshore teams in India, Vietnam, Colombia, or Philippines. There's always a trade-off naturally, but the geography has an impact here on pricing. And then last but not least, the price can be heavily impacted by industry-specific requirements, because some requirements are industry dependent, like compliance with specific regulations of or managing risk in the banking context, in the financial industry, that can incur a high cost due to security, regulatory compliance, while, for example, healthcare may require certifications after go live, which can be double the price of production. And more often than not, this is not required if you build like a restaurant app, for example. So wrapping this part up, the factors impacting IT project cost the most are the scale, the scope, the complexity of the project, chosen technologies and tools, the location of your, let's say, delivery, and some industry-specific requirements. So what often drives up project costs as you go? Well, the first thing is the scope creep. This happens when the project scope starts to expand uncontrollably as you go, with every additional feature or change requiring extra work, increasing hourly cost, or possibly necessitating additional specialists. So investing time in the discovery phase, which aims to prepare for future work, helps avoiding this scope creep. They say $1 spent in discovery is worth $100 in production because of the cost of implementing changes later on. The second thing is the lack or, let's say, limited approach to testing. This can generate costs in the long run because fixing, bug repairs, additional testing post-project completion often costs more than if regular testing has been conducted from the beginning. And the third aspect is the integration with other systems or legacy systems, because integration requires often, the knowledge of external systems, documentation, availability of experts of the third party, testing their compatibility with the new solution, and that all consumes time and resources. Sometimes we are ready on our end, but the third parties don't provide something crucial for their API, for example, and that hinders the entire project. Missing documentation can be a problem here. Generally, the more integrations, the more potential issues there are that are not fully within our control to resolve, and therefore incur more costs. Let's move to tips then. How can you stay on top of the situation and how can you stay on top of the budget? So number one tip is work on a detailed project specification created during the discovery phase. That's by far the best thing you can do to stay on top of costs, because an unclear or incomplete project specification will always lead to misunderstandings and additional costs. Broadly describing the goal and outlining requirements only at a high level will always prolong the development process, as requirements they need to be detailed enough to begin development in the first place. So how to protect yourself? Make sure that the project specification is thorough, is precise, work with an analyst, describe all functional and non-functional requirements, decompose each element of the system, make sure everyone has the same definition of done in their head, definition of ready. The more detailed the spec, the lower the risk of extra work and extra cost. That is, in my understanding, in my experience, having the most significant impact on the overall invoice scale, I would say. Number two is avoiding ambiguous contract, and that's a legal advice here. Contracts with unclear terms can open the door to unexpected fees. For example, for services that weren't explicitly defined at the start. So how should you protect yourself? Read the contract carefully before signing. Work with a law firm that is understanding your context. Make sure the contract includes information about the scope of work, the deadlines, the compensation. Is it fixed? Is it hourly? The model for the compensation, terms of making changes, the warranty, the rules of handling potential delays or unforeseen issues, change requests, all that stuff. I guess it requires an additional podcast episode just to go through the, let's say, standard agreement for work, and I'm sure I'm going to record it, but just bear in mind the contract itself has a significant impact on cost as well. Number three, understand the pricing model, because there are different pricing models for IT projects, which impact costs at the end of the day. The main two are, I guess, fixed price and time and materials in 95% of cases, and their variations. So how do you protect yourself? Basically, you use the right contracting model, the right model for pricing for the right situation. Fixed price is only a good option if the project specification is clear and detailed. However, it usually leads to A, higher upfront cost since the contractor wants to cover the risks, and B, less flexibility for changes, and every change request will cost you additional premium on top of the price you agreed for the scope in the first place. And the second model is time and materials. That offers more flexibility, but makes cost control more difficult and unpredictable, as the project scope is not fully set. So you know, let's say more or less your running cost for each month, but you don't know yet how much the product's going to cost, because you don't know what the product is. You only learn it as you go. Number 3, maintenance and technical support costs, because after the project completion, maintenance, updates, technical support, SLAs, services may be needed. These costs are often not included in the project estimate from day one, so make sure they are. Maintenance costs can be high, where large applications with numerous users, multiple licenses, costly cloud architecture, that can go into thousands of dollars. It's worth considering from the start. Just keeping the lights up can be more expensive than building the project in the first place. Because during the project, there may be a need to purchase additional tools, software licenses, cloud services. This can be software as a service and then can be prolonged in the long run. So how do you protect yourself? You ask the provider about all potential costs, the total cost of ownership related to tools or software that may be needed during and after the project. What is the cost of the infrastructure for just keeping the lights on? Next one, project management. Weak project management can lead to chaos. That leads to delays, and that leads to unforeseen costs. How do you protect yourself? You ensure that there is a dedicated project manager responsible for communication, for scheduling, and for task execution. Regular status meetings and progress reporting, that's a must. That helps avoiding issues that does not translate into additional costs. And finally, what I'm touching on here is communication. Regular communication with your partner and the team, setting priorities, asking questions, tracking project progress, that's essentials. Transparent and open communication is vital, so you have to stay on top of it by being present, being active, being engaged, and requiring transparency and open communication as the baseline for delivery. You cannot go either way. So wrapping things up, there's no easy answer to how much it's going to cost here, because you can't estimate an IT project like cost at a glance. It takes days, if not weeks. But key factors affecting the price and durations are scope, scale, complexity, technologies, tools, team, and domain specificity. During the project, the cost is impacted by scope adjustments, testing, and systems integrations in the first place. And once the project is done, there's going to be cost of maintenance and ongoing supports, and this will be crucial. So remember, good preparation, legal safeguards, understanding the pricing model, using a proper pricing model that is a good fit, budgeting for the total cost of ownership, focusing on product management, and fostering open and transparent communications are best things you can do. And if you want to get a project estimate or are looking for a partner, feel free to reach out to Speednet at speednetsoftware.com/contact. Our estimates align with actual production costs in 90% of cases based on our historical data. So we'll be more than happy to help you with your estimate as well. Take care and take it easy. Until next time.